Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cesternino, and I get to podcast about reality TV strategy games on Rob Has a Podcast. On my shows, I get to bring on reality TV guests and talk about all the strategic moves and crazy nonsense that happens on shows like Survivor, Big Brother, The Amazing Race, and more. I thought it was a dream come true when I got to go and be a contestant on Survivor 2 different times, but I've never had more fun in my entire life than I get to have hosting Rob Has a Podcast. When I started doing the podcast back in 2010, I didn't think anybody was going to listen. I had no idea that it was going to grow to this point. We've built such an amazing community. For years, I knew that I wanted to do Rob Has a Podcast full time, but there was never a way to make that financially possible. In December of 2013, when my department got laid off at work, I decided that it was finally time to commit, to figure out a way to make my living doing podcasting. That was the point that the community of Rob Has a Podcast changed my life forever when I put up my profile on Patreon. Patreon is a crowdfunding site that allows the members of the Rob Has a Podcast community to become patrons and support the shows with monthly contributions. I was and continue to be blown away by the support of the Rob Has a Podcast patrons. Their generosity allows me to focus on doing the podcast full time without having to take on additional work to support my family. I'm so thankful to the patrons of Rob Has a Podcast that I've created some great rewards to show my appreciation. Once a month, I do a special patron-only podcast in which the patrons ask me all of the questions that they're dying to know the answers to.
One time I did a podcast with the Survivor, and after it was over, he told me he didn't know I was recorded and told me I couldn't post it. I was wondering if you could talk about who that is and if there's a good story behind it.
Yeah, I'll tell that story.
In addition, I invite the patrons to join me in our patron-only RHAP Facebook group. You can check out my Patreon profile to see how to earn other cool rewards like signed photos and even a personalized 30-minute podcast with me that I'll send you a copy of. If you're watching this video, I suspect you're already a fan of Rob Has a Podcast, but if you're new to RHAP, check out some of these celebrity endorsements.
Hey, you know, Cesternino, I think you do a pretty good job, but these impressions, come on, smarten up. Rob Cesternino, he's a good guy, he's not a bad guy. If you didn't listen to his show, it would be bollocks, and you know it. Oh man, are you kidding me? I listen to the show all of the time. Rockin' Rob and Steve, those 2 guys are huge. They talk to all of the players. They do such a good job. The only way I could listen to it more is if instead of speaking about Survivor, they were speaking about llama.
You know why I like the little podcast thingamajig? Because they call it RHAP. It makes me so happy.
Every day, I wake up and I thank God for 2 things. Number 1, that I'm alive. And number 2, that Rob Cesternino has a podcast. Oh yeah, Rob Cesternino, I know that kid. He's always talking about Survivor. You know, he's kind of pathetic, but sometimes I put on the show when I go out, you know, looking for tapioca. If you didn't think that this podcast was the greatest podcast of all time, then that thinking would be flawed. I ain't ever listened to it, and I probably never will.
Everything you need to know about becoming a patron is right here on my profile page. If becoming a patron of RHAP sounds like a good fit, I can't wait to hear from you. Remember, being a patron is totally optional, and I completely understand if it's something that's not right for you. It's been my choice since the beginning to always make the episodes of Rob Has a Podcast free, and I'll always continue to do so. And thank you so much for letting me work on my dream job. Getting to have smart conversations about very silly subjects with people every single day. Thanks again for all your support. I hope you continue to enjoy Rob Has a Podcast just as much as I enjoy making it. Look, this podcast is huge. I needed this show. Rob talks to the survivors all the time, but he can't talk to a llama.